Welcome to the Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded podcast. I am your host, Ness Jones, and we'll be deep diving into all things separation anxiety. But before we get started, please make sure you like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another one. And don't forget, if you are interested in joining my easy step-by-step training program to resolve separation anxiety in your dog, you'll find the link in the show notes. Now let's get started. And we are back. And today I will be talking about crating, or if you're in the US, you sometimes call it kenneling. Here in Australia, we mainly call it crating a dog. But we're going to talk about whether you should or shouldn't crate your dog when you walk out the door. I get asked this all the time, and it's a pretty important topic, I do have to say. So when you leave, what do you do with your dog? Do they have free roam of the house, or are you going to put them in a crate? Now, this is a generalization because every dog is different. But in general, most dogs do better with more space to roam around. So they actually struggle more with home alone time when they're locked in a crate. Now, that's not always the case for every single dog. Some dogs really enjoy their crate and they will actually seek it out and they like that den-like atmosphere. And for those dogs, yes, by all means, leave it in the crate. But for the other ones that do struggle more, then I would suggest the best thing to do is leave them out. So what we can find is that for many dogs, when they're locked into a crate, when you leave them by themselves, it's a form of containment phobia, although I prefer to call it claustrophobia because I suffer from claustrophobia. So for me, that kind of is a really good way of explaining it to people if you think about what claustrophobia is. So what we have here is we have a dog that's already afraid to be by themselves, and then we're actually adding in another layer of fear on top of that. So you've got the not being able to be by themselves, and then we've got the crate, which is compounding that fear. So we've got a fear layered on top of a fear. Now, I know some trainers might suggest locking a dog with separation anxiety into a crate and putting a bark collar on it, whether it's the type that zaps or the type that emits a smell, and often it's something like citronella. So then we've got three fears. We've got the fear of being home alone, the fear of being locked in a crate, and then we've got the fear of experiencing pain or an aversive. And what we see is a dog that is quiet. Maybe it keeps the neighbors happy because the dog's not going to bark because they've got a bark collar on. However, what is that dog going through? What is it learning? Is it still frightened? It just can't vocalize its fear. And I think that's a little bit cruel, or not just a little bit. I think that's really cruel. So you've got a fearful dog, and then we're going to say, hey, guess what? We're going to add some more fear on top of that. So keep that in mind. And obviously with the bark collars, the type that zaps, it causes pain. That's what makes them stop barking. But the other ones with the smell, so that could be very aversive too. It may not sound terribly aversive, but it could be, because if you think how strong a dog's sense of smell is, and then we add that whatever it is, they can't get away from it. They're in an enclosed space for starters. So how do they remove themselves from the smell? But also it's obviously going to land on their coat, and they can't remove that smell from their coat either. And their sense of smell being so strong, it's actually not very pleasant at all. Is it kinder than using a shock? Yeah, I guess it is, but it's still very, very unpleasant for the dog. So my preference for that reason is to have the dog loose in the house if they are one of the dogs that prefer more space. The other issue with crates, if you are going to lock a dog into a crate, is that many of them will try to escape. They're that panicked that they try to escape the crate. I've heard of plenty of guardians come home and say their dog's covered in blood, or they got home and the dog is on the outside of the crate because the dogs got out and the crate is still closed up. The dog's smart enough to figure out how to get out, but they can hurt themselves really badly. They can damage their teeth. Often there is tooth damage because the dog chews on the bars. And unfortunately, what many people do then when that happens is that they go and buy a high impact crate, which is one that the dogs can't break out of and they can't hurt themselves on, which in that sense is good. They can't hurt themselves. But again, it's not teaching the dog about safe home alone time, about how to learn to feel confident when you walk out the door. And wouldn't it be so much nicer to know that you can walk out the door and your dog is quite happy with being home alone, is loose in the house, and is just going to have a snooze while you're gone, and is quite confident and calm, and just comfortable with you not being there? Isn't that a much nicer way for you to walk out the door, knowing that your dog is like that, than thinking, yes, my dog is safe in a crate, a high impact crate. Yes, they're not barking because maybe they've got a bark collar on, but also knowing that your dog is still in distress. So what we can often see too is, obviously you've got the dog that is going to panic and try to escape, but we also see dogs that become shut down. So what that literally is the dog might look like it's resting and relaxing, but it is still in a huge state of fear. So a good example of this is one of my favorite analogies, because as I said, I suffer from claustrophobia. I don't often get into positions where I'm feeling claustrophobic, but I did have to get into a lift the other day, and it's that small enclosed space. And one of my greatest fears is if that lift stopped working and I actually got trapped in one. Just the thought of it terrifies me. I can feel myself getting tight. So here we are. We've got me. Okay, so I've got claustrophobia. And I've also got a terrible fear of cockroaches. I am terrified of them. So there's my two fears. So for your dog, it's being left by themselves and being locked into the crate. For me, it is being locked into a small enclosed space and cockroaches. So let's say you lock me into my small enclosed space, whether it's a lift that's stuck or you've locked me up in a cupboard, please don't. And then you fill it full of cockroaches, my two fears, all in one spot. Obviously, I am going to panic. I'm screaming. I'm trying to hit the walls. I'm terrified. I'm really, really, help, let me out, let me out, let me out, let me out. Nobody comes, and I give up and I shut down. And I would literally probably just curl up into a ball and try to weather it and hope that somebody comes and rescues me. That is what shutdown looks like. So I've yelled and yelled and yelled. Your dog barks and barks and barks, tries to get out, panics, 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 and then they may shut down. So the fear is still there. The fear hasn't gone anywhere. What has happened is they don't know what to do anymore. They give up and they shut down. So that's not really nice for the dog. It's a solution to put a bark collar on. It's a solution to put them in a crate, but we're still not teaching them about, hey, it's okay. Yes, I did leave you by yourself, but I'm coming back. You're safe. You know this home. You're fine when I'm here. Now I need you to be fine when I'm not here. And we're going to teach you how to do it, but we're going to do it in a way that's kind, and helps the dog through this difficult situation for them, and not compound their fear by adding in more fears. Now, I know somebody will be watching this, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe while you're there. Or maybe you're listening to it on one of the podcast apps. Somebody will be watching this or listening to it and thinking, I cannot leave my dog out of a crate. That's just silly, because I know exactly what's going to happen when I do. My dog is going to be so worried and panicked, it's going to destroy the house. It's going to eat the furniture. Maybe it's going to eat the surrounds of the door. I know it does this because it's done it in the past, so therefore it must stay in a crate. Or perhaps it'll be, yeah, if I leave my dog out, it's going to poo and poop. It's going to poo and pee all over the house, which I'm not prepared to put up with. It can do it in its crate. So my response to that is that should not be happening if your dog is experiencing what I call safe home alone time. So if you're doing it in a training scenario, you're never going to let your dog get to the point where they're panicked, because if you go back to the earlier episodes, I talk about this, about keeping the dog under threshold. And if we can keep the dog under threshold, they're not getting to the point of panic to do the destroying or the peeing or the pooing. So what we do then is we do the training, we make sure the dog never goes over threshold, and we are watching them on a live camera feed, of course, too. And I will, at the end of this, you'll see 2 links on the YouTube video where you can click on either one of them, and it'll take you to the episode on thresholds or the episode on the importance of observing your dog. So anybody that has that concern that I can't leave them outside of the crate, you don't need to be worried, provided you're watching on a live camera feed and provided that your dog is only having safe under threshold absences where they are learning that it's okay to be by themselves. They're feeling confident the whole time that you are gone. And then we use gradual exposure therapy and desensitization to those safe absences. So I want to put your minds at ease if this is something that's been going around in the back of your mind. I know there's a lot of advice out there on the internet. Take it from me, I am a certified separation anxiety specialist, and these are my recommendations. Unless your dog is the type of dog that likes that den-like environment and is more comfortable in the crate while you're gone, I would suggest trying to leave them outside of the crate. But just make sure that your dog is having that safe absence. If your dog is reacting, you've pushed them too far, they've gone over threshold. And that is one of the main things that people seem to do when they try to do this training on their own. And that is they wait to see the reaction before they return. We don't want to get to the point where we have the reaction, because it means that they're over threshold. So keep your dog under threshold and then just gradually increase the time. And honestly, I think a lot of people fall down on that particular part of the process. And if you do need help, maybe even if it's just for a month, just so you get into the rhythm of the training and how to do it properly, then make sure you click the membership link under this YouTube video, or if you're listening to it on your podcast app, then it will be there as well. And click on the membership. And if you just need some support for a month or so, just to help make sure that you're on the right track and you're not actually undermining your own training, because who wants to do that? Because you're not going to move forward. Just click the link and you can sign up for my membership program on the link. You have been listening to Ness Jones on the Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes to learn more about my programs and how I can help you with tailored training. Until next time.